What's up, beautiful people? Today we're going to be checking out a video by Jordan Peterson. This one is Jordan Peterson leaves atheists beyond Maher speechless on the Bible. Let's get to it.
So there's a very interesting idea that lurks behind the notion that you can establish a covenant with God. And
Well, I mean, the Bible is so well known, even by people who haven't read it. And by the way, a lot of the people who put their hand on it and love it so much have never read it. Certainly not all the way through. It's a big, long book.
Yes, it is.
And it's full of mostly nonsense. Once in a while, it stumbles upon wisdom. I mean, it's
Stumbles upon.
But come on, you got to give these people their due. It was written as, first of all, it's an anthology.
I'm going to tell you a story.
Okay. A
Tell me
Bible
what you
story?
think about Bible story. This is Jordan Peterson's
I love your Bible
Bible story.
stories.
Okay, this is a Bible story. So I've been looking at the story of Jonah.
Yeah.
Well, this is a story that you'll appreciate. So here's what happens to Jonah. He's just minding his own business, and then the voice of God comes to him, and the voice says, "You have to go to this city, Nineveh, because everybody in Nineveh is like they've strayed off the path, and I'm thinking about wiping them out. But you could maybe go there and tell them like how foolish they are, and they'll straighten up, and then I won't have to destroy the city." And Jonah thinks, "There's no goddamn way I'm going to do that. First of all, Nineveh is a city of his enemies.
Babylonian.
It's a city that he's not allied with, and so he thinks, well, you guys can go to hell in a handbasket, and if God wipes you out, that's perfectly fine with me.
Right.
And then he also thinks, like any wise man would, it's like, I see, this is the task you have for me. It's like, there's 150,000 people there. I'm a foreigner. I'm going to go there and tell them how they're misbehaving, and that's going to work out well for me. So he thinks, to hell with that, like any sensible person would. And he doesn't say what he has to say, right? So then he hops on a boat and he gets the hell out of there. Well, it turns out that God's not very happy if you're informed that you have something to say and then you don't say it. So the storms come and the waves rise, and now the ship's in danger. Okay, so what does that
You got in the whale.
Yes, that's right. It means that if you don't say what you
so
have to
Bill
say
knows
when
the
you're
story.
called upon to say it, you'll put the whole damn ship at risk. Now the soldiers figure this out, or the sailors, they figure out, there must be someone on the boat that like isn't right with God, and that's why we're in danger of being swamped. So they will go and ask everybody, and Jonah, to his credit, says, yeah, it's me. I had the voice of conscience made itself manifest to me. I had a task to do. I refused it. I'm screwing things up. And the sailors actually try to save him, but it doesn't work, so they throw him overboard. Now you think, okay, Jonah's got what he deserves because he shut the hell up when he had something to say, and now he's going to die. And you think that's pretty damn rough. And partly what that means is if you hold your tongue when you have something to say, then you're going to put the ship at risk, and you'll be lucky if you don't die. All right, but that's not enough. That's not nearly enough, because
That's a good analogy. I didn't recognize that.
that isn't all that happens if you don't say what you're called upon to say. So the next thing that happens is Jonah's drowning away. That's about as bad as it gets. And then this creature from hell itself comes up from the bottom of the abyss and takes him down. And so now he's in hell for 3 days. And so that's the next part of the story, which is that if you're called upon to say what you have to say and you refuse it, like you'll end up in a place where you wish you were
not
dead.
the whale?
It's the whale.
Oh, okay.
But it's the same thing. Like that in the story, the whale is described as hell. It's exactly the same idea.
In Religulous, the guy who was arguing with me, and he said, this point was very important to him. He said, the Bible does not say whale. It says big fish. Okay, well now it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, well, it's the thing. Well, what it is, it's a representation of the thing that dwells in the dark.
It's so interesting that you see the lessons in these, and I just always read these things as like super fucking stupid from the Bronze Age, And obviously they were telling people something. I mean, whoever wrote this had a message in mind.
Well, they were trying to they were trying to figure out by telling stories how the state itself got corrupted. And this is one of those stories. So the story is, here's how the state gets corrupted. You're called upon to tell your fellow man, enemy or not, when they're not behaving properly. When your conscience tells you to do that, you're called upon to do that. If you don't do that, the whole ship will start to rock.
But do you think the ancients who were reading this at the time, and they read the story about he gets swallowed by the big fish
Yeah.
or the whale. You think they got this message? They were like, yeah, but what this really means is when you're called upon, excuse me, I'm talking, when you're called upon, then you step up and do it.
No,
Or do
no,
you
I would
think-
say it's a step, and it's a dreamlike step in the developing of understanding. So before you fully understand something, you can represent it in a story, right? It's kind of halfway. A kid
no,
who
I'm
starts to understand something by acting it out.
They may. I mean, they may have gotten it, or they may have gotten it on an unconscious level, right?
They got it at an implicit level,
On
which
an
is what
implicit
you,
level.
yeah, well,
Right.
that's what you
Okay.
get when you watch a story, is you get it at an
Right.
implicit level. And it's actually very powerful, right? I mean, when people go to movies, most of the time, most people, when they go to movies, don't sit around afterwards and discuss what the movie meant. They just enjoy the story.
Right.
But that doesn't mean they didn't learn anything. It
Right.
just means they don't reflect on what they learned. Now, the people who came up with these stories, they were telling the stories because the stories were really interesting. But the question, there's a deeper question, is, well, why the hell was that story interesting? And why was it remembered? And so what happens to Jonah is that he's in the whale for 3 days. And then he thinks, all right, now I'm in hell. Okay, I'm gonna repent of my inadequacy. I'm willing to say what I have to say. So the whale spits him up on the beach. Then he goes to Nineveh and he tells everybody what the hell they're doing wrong, and God decides to spare the city. And so for me, this story
It's a
encapsulates.
win-win.
It's well, it's a little hard on Jonah. You know,
Well, the way he
there's the
lived.
whole hell thing. He does. He lived. That's right. It's a
Did he,
rebirth
did he
story, too.
Did he relocate to Nineveh?
No, it's just a pilgrimage to Nineveh.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
he did go, okay.
But he goes there, and then,
Right.
then the city is in fact saved. But it's perfect, Bill, because what it shows.
Perfect, Phil.
and I know you know this because you wouldn't speak the way you speak, and this is true of comedians in general. You know that you have a moral obligation, like a deep and profound moral obligation,
I do.
to say what you have to say. And,
You're right.
Well, then you might say, well, what would happen if people didn't say that? Well, that's the story of
Sink.
Sodom and Gomorrah. If there isn't anyone who's left who is good and will tell the truth, then the whole city disappears. And the same thing happens in the story of Jonah. So there's a very interesting idea that lurks behind the notion that you can establish a covenant with God. And you can tell me what you make of this. It's like it's a reflection of the fact that human beings bargain with fate all the time. We bargain with the future all the time. So and here's how we do it. So, and this is what you teach your kids. You teach your kids that if you forego immediate gratification, so you give it up, sacrifice it, because that's a sacrifice, that the future will be better as a consequence. Well, that's okay. It's a contractual relate. Well, that's what's trying.
Oh, will
that's
be
right.
better as a consequence. So consequence can be good. I always thought it was all negative.
Well, that's okay. It's a contractual relate. Well, that's
And
what's
it will.
trying.
Usually.
Right. That's the thing that's so interesting, is that it actually will.
If you don't have that piece of cake tonight,
Yeah.
you'll be healthier tomorrow.
Right. And if you don't go off and play with your friends immediately after school, but play the piano for 20 minutes, then
Right.
in 10 years, when you're actually a musician, all sorts of
Right.
okay. So but it's, see, this is something that's very uniquely human, because human beings have learned that if we give up, there are certain forms of immediate gratification. If we give them up, which means we offer them up, it's a sacrificial offering, then we can make a covenant, a bargain with the future.
Right.
Right. That's what's being reflected in those stories, where the notion is that you can bargain.
That was actually a very good video. I've read that story probably like 100 times since like nursery, school, or even kindergarten. I've been reading the story. We had this book of, I think it's called My Book of Bible Stories. I don't know if you guys know the book, but I've been reading this book for a very long time. I never understood it the way Jonah Peterson just explained it. But it's very interesting the way he said it. There's a different lesson in the lesson. Beautiful. Let me know what you think about that one. Well explained. And I think I kind of agree. I believe what he said. I do agree with him. This is the end of this one. Smash the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
I made this bet on my own,